Thursday is always the first Thursday of the month of March. So this is just a quick history of publishing and books. So it's going to be 15 minutes hopefully, so you might be about 5 minutes late for your lesson, but I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible. It's about the celebration of books and how books evolved, where they came from, how they developed, and the significance of books. So, without further ado, let me first one here. A brief history of the book. Keyword there is brief. Okay, it all started really thousands and thousands of years ago in Western Asia, Egypt. And the first books, in quote marks, were produced on papyrus. Papyrus was a rush that grew by the Nile. They had a huge supply of papyrus. Papyrus they used for clothes, they used for mats, but they also wrote on it. And here we have the Egyptian alphabet or hieroglyphs, and they were produced in the form of scrolls, which survived. Many of these have survived because of the dry climate. So miraculously, these papyrus books have survived thousands and thousands of years because of the dry climate. There we are. You can go and see these at the British Museum, if you like. The Romans. Let's have a look at the Romans. The book publishing industry, as we know it today, began in the 1st century BC with the Romans. They produced books in the form of scrolls. And these, instead of using papyrus, they used parchment. Does anyone know what parchment is? What is parchment? Anyone know? It's not paper, it's what? Well, it's animal skin. So they were writing on animal skin. So it must have really stank. Imagine a library full of animal skins. So this is, and of course, the Romans also invented the concept of the library. The word library derives from Latin. So this was a public area where you could read books. So whenever anyone asks you, what did the Romans ever do for us? They invented libraries. What do you have in your school? You have a library. Yeah, thanks to the Romans. And also to Kathy David over there, our resident librarian. So libraries, that's the Roman idea. Right, the invention of paper. Now this happened about 100 BC. Yeah? So it's about 100 BC. And it originated in China. It was one of China's 4 great inventions. The compass, gunpowder, and printing are the other 3. China has the most advanced science and technology in the ancient world. Now, the book manufacturing industry, the mass production of books, happened about 150 AD. Let me just read this out. 150 AD, and 105 AD, in the Han Dynasty. And a government official, now, pardon my Chinese pronunciation, but anyway, I'll have a go. Sei Lun started a paper-making industry in 105 AD. And so suddenly, paper was being produced and spread all the way through China. It took off and was spread all the way through China. And they made paper. Now this is the recipe for making paper, the first kind of paper. Finely chopped mulberry bark. Mulberry is a tree or plant, and they use mulberry bark. Finely chopped hemp rags. So they use on kind of clothes. And they used to mash it up and flatten it, and then press it out, press out the water, and let it dry. And so that was how the first use of paper came about. Okay? And that's incredibly important. And it spread all over China and in the Far East, went to Japan. Buddhist monks began to mass produce prayers. So Buddhist prayers were mass produced. And by 650 AD, we're going to look at the next stage. By 650 AD, we have printing. Yeah, 650 AD. So this was the mass production of prayers. Okay, and these were woodblock printing. This was the first type of printing. They were woodblocks, so it's like strips. And this was 650 AD by the Buddhist monks in China, and they went through the Far East, they spread through the Far East into Japan, into Korea. So this is a very, very important step here. 650 AD, block printing. Remember that date, 650 AD? I'll test you later on this. Right, we're now going to move on to the next stage, the 11th century. This is the 11th century. We have the beginnings of movable type. So movable type, it started again in China and it spread to Egypt. Yeah? Do you think where Egypt is? It's West Asia. So it's in the western part of Asia. And then of course that was quite clearly connected to Europe. So from Egypt, medieval Egypt, talking about the 12th, 13th centuries, it then spread into Europe, to countries like Italy. So here we have movable type. So this is very, very important. You can use different, create words through different types, moving it around. So it's much more flexible. And of course what we're seeing here now is the beginnings of mass publishing. Yeah? In Europe, it's comparatively late. And we're talking about, which century is this? Oh, hang on, this is a library before we get to this. This is a great library of Alexandria in Egypt. So Egypt is a great sort of cultural centre in the ancient world. And this is one of the most largest and most significant libraries in the ancient world. Remember, libraries originated in Rome. Alexandria originally was part of the Roman Empire, the eastern part of the empire. So they established this huge library. Here it is, magnificent library, a bit like the DLD library. Massive. Every book apparently in the ancient world was published there. But of course, there was a great disaster. They actually reckoned it was a number of libraries. It wasn't just one single building, but it's being sort of turned into a kind of myth. It's like one library. But there was a terrible event that happened. About 2,000 years ago, they lost countless masterpieces of classical literature. So if you study classics, many of these texts were actually lost in this fire. Can you imagine that? There were no backup copies, no digital versions of these texts, so they all went up in smoke, or large numbers. This is the burning of the library, about 2,000 years ago. Okay, so that was the burning of the library. Now this is where things change very much in Europe. We're talking here about the 15th century. Johann Gutenberg and his printing press. 1450 in Europe, the invention of mechanical movable, metal movable type. Remember, movable type originated in China. Originally it was porcelain. Yeah, porcelain. You make vases out of porcelain. Yeah, so originally it was porcelain or wood, but this was metal, so it's more durable. It lasted longer. And this is Gutenberg. Gutenberg published the most widely read, circulated book ever produced, which is the Bible. He produced the Gutenberg Bible, and it was the most famous, most mass-produced Bible of all, and it was spread through the printing press. And that was very, very important, the printing of the Bible, because it opened up religion to everyone. Gutenberg is basically where Germany is today, Germany, Johann Gutenberg, 1450. So this is the beginnings of a communications revolution. You yourselves have lived through a communications revolution known as the internet. And this is the first communications revolution. It changed every aspect of human society and human life. So this is the key event, the mechanical printing press here. Okay, let's move on. Right. Who's this guy? Mr. William Shakespeare. Right, 1623. This is a key event in the history of the book. 1623, 7 years after Shakespeare's death, the publication of the first folio. The collection of all his plays. Actually, one or two got left out, but never mind. 36 plays in total. 36 plays. They reckon only about 550 of these were actually published in 1623 in London. About 235 survive, and they're incredibly valuable. I think the last folio that sold at auction sold for about £6 million. So it's one of the most valuable books ever produced. But it was incredibly important for the history of the English language as well. Many phrases we use today derive from Shakespeare, and his work was gathered together, all his plays, 36 of them were gathered together by two friends of his, and in a way preserved. Some of those plays could have been lost. Yeah? 19 plays before the folio had been published. The rest hadn't been published. So those plays could have been lost if it wasn't for this, the first folio, 1623. find one of these in your bookshelf, do hold on to it. We've got a facsimile actually in the library. So you can see a facsimile, a copy of this. Yeah. So you're going to have a look at that. Right, where do we get to now? Now, this is the 18th century. Dr. Johnson. This isn't the first dictionary, but it's perhaps one of the most important in the 18th century. And the reason why it's very important is it's standardized English pronunciation. So it gave a kind of definitive spelling of words, and from the spelling, fixed spelling, and from spelling came pronunciation. So people wanted to speak like the dictionary. They would look at the dictionary and say, right, well, this word chain is written C-H-A-I-N, so it's pronounced chain, not chine, which is how it could have been pronounced before. So fixed pronunciation. So that's the origins of standard English pronunciation. It derives from this dictionary in the 18th century. And people wanted to speak like the dictionary. And so it led to what we now call Queen's English, the most prestigious kind of pronunciation. So this is the beginnings of kind of standard pronunciation, standardized spelling, and it derives from this. Before, everyone kind of more or less spoke the same. So what this did was to create a kind of prestige variety of English. Queen's English. Only about 5 to 10% of people use what's called RP, or the Queen's English. And it derives from the publication of this dictionary in the mid-18th century. Dr. Johnson. There's about 40,000 definitions of words. Here we are. 9 years to compile, 40,000 definitions, played a key role in the standardization of English spelling. Because people wanted to speak like a dictionary, it introduced the concept of correct pronunciation. Standard. Let's move on. Right, what have we got to here? Oh, 9 o'clock. I'm just going to go over time. In the 19th century, popular writers like Charles Dickens became literary superstars. Now we're talking here about the 19th century. The whole of society, they actually cancelled Parliament when one of Charles Dickens' novels was about to be released. He was that big a figure, a huge sort of superstar. And his novels were published in the form of 3 volumes, because many of them went to libraries. So his novels are very, very long. Not all of them, but most of them are very, very long. And he became a great national figure, a great entertainer. At Christmas, what film or book do you read? It's associated with Christmas, can you all tell me? Has Scrooge in it? Anyone? Christmas Carol, Christmas Carol. It's become part of the English British Christmas, Charles Dickens. So the way we celebrate Christmas today has been influenced by people like Charles Dickens. He kind of in a way invents the modern day Christmas, what we associate with Christmas. Holly, turkey, Christmas carols, all those things, snow, all those things we associate with Christmas, you could say in a sense derived from Charles Dickens. And they spread globally around the world. This is Charles Dickens. Okay, let's move on. Oh, right. Now we're in the 20th century. What's happening here? I think this is 1934 in Nazi Germany. In the 20th century, some people didn't like books because of the ideas they contained. And this is a famous quote by a writer called Henry Heinz. It says, this is a public burning of books. Books that the Nazis regarded as dangerous. Books which threatened their racist ideas and beliefs. And they used to publicly burn books. And here's the quote: where they burn books, they will in the end burn human beings too. That's a very prophetic saying. It's a very, very disturbing image of free speech being destroyed, literally burned. Free speech, the ability to express opinions which you hold, as opposed to what the government tells you to believe. So this was Harry Potter. Well, that's Harry Potter. Well, who's that? J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling the most successful novel series in the whole of history. Let me just give you some facts here about Harry Potter. There are 7 novels. At least 500 million copies have been sold worldwide. At least 500 million. 500 million and counting. More than 180 million copies have been sold in the US alone. 180 million have been translated all around the world, made into films, merchandising. It's an absolute global phenomenon. And it's been very, very good in many respects, again, from Britain's point of view, in terms of the kind of cultural export. Again, it shows how British culture has kind of globalised itself and spread itself around the world. So, Harry Potter. Have you all read Harry Potter? What's the first Harry Potter novel?
Harry Potter
and the Philosopher's Stone. In America, it's called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. They changed the word philosopher to sorcerer because they believed Americans wouldn't know what the word philosopher meant. It's snobbish. Anyway, they changed it to the Sorcerer's Stone. So this is Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling, as I say, a great phenomenon. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at the final. Now these are looking, when I had one of these, I thought this was cutting edge technology. Apparently people know the decline of the e-readers. Kindle, you've got a Kindle? Yes, they are. We're from the same generation, aren't we? Yeah, Kindle. Your generation don't use Kindles anymore. Kindles have been declining. So the e-reader device, like Kindles, they've declined. But e-books have risen. So how does your generation read books? How do you read a book? An e-book. You read it on your phone. You read it on your phone, or you might read it on your tablet. Do you know 92% of Americans own a smartphone? So this, when it came out, was thought to threaten the book. It was going to destroy books for Kindle and similar devices, but apparently it hasn't. They've been declining massively. Your generation now reads books digitally. So you're a different generation, you read books. But of course you're reading a book, it's just any, it's a digitalised version. As I say, a huge 45% of adults in America own an e-tablet, so that's what's happening now to the book. So the way you read is different from, say, my generation. I was very book-based, paper-based, you're reading books. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this talk on the brief history of the book. Sarah